Welcome, everyone. I think that today's session, we can all agree, is very timely. I'm really looking at the latest in climate technology and spotlighting the leading technologists who are driving change. As we meet here in Barcelona, we've seen temperature records shattered in the Western North America. 46 degrees Celsius in Portland, Oregon. Just one example of increasing number of dangerous situations. So climate action is not really a choice. And as an industry, the mobile sector has been playing a leadership role, not just in its own business and in its own supply chain, but through the enablement effect that digital services can bring in helping other sectors respond. In 2019, mobile operators set an ambition to be net zero by 2050 at the very latest. And I'm very proud of the progress we've seen to date. As of today, 65% of the mobile operators by revenue have committed to rapidly cutting their targets by 2030. And we can really see that we have the potential to lift beyond our weight. Although the mobile sector's carbon footprint itself is only 0.4% of global emissions, our research has found that mobile technology is enabling carbon reductions 10 times its own footprint already. The global pandemic has made clear, like never before, the importance of digital connectivity. And we see how it makes things work more efficiently right across the economy. And so I felt it was the right time here at Mobile World Congress Barcelona to talk about this in terms of climate technology. How can technology help us tackle the problems of climate change? How much technology do we need to do this? And which is the right technology to deploy? Let's start by getting some perspectives with our keynote speaker, Marc Gomez, CEO of ABB Spain. Marc will dive into how ABB is using digitalization to solve some of today's sustainability challenges. Marc, I welcome you to the stage.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this very interesting session. Let's start with quoting Dreyer, who was a famous American psychologist, who was saying that if you change the way you look at the things that you look at change. And somebody will say, Marc is becoming crazy. Why he's telling that thing? Well, first of all, because I think in a lot of the transformation, digital transformation is a clear revolution, or the movement to a more sustainable future. One of the barriers that we have is exactly the way that we look at the things. And we need to see or look at the things differently to really make the change. But also because it's important to understand my presentation, I'm trying to change you the way that you look at the things and present you some of the solutions that we are doing. But just going directly to the end, beginning with the end, and then I can save you all the time of my presentation. You can skip. No, jokes aside. I mean, I'm a firm believer of exactly that quote. Digitalization and sustainability is an indivisible pact. And that's very clear for me. I was praying for that since a lot of years ago. But one of the things that the pandemic bring us, it was the biggest, largest, the greatest proof of concept on digitalization that we can imagine ever. And that was proving things like, for example, that's any given day in Madrid, 9 o'clock in one famous, one of our squares there. That was how it looked like several months ago, before the pandemic. And just mid of March, that was the same picture just a few days later. And the ones that we were talking about, that mobility needs to be more sustainable, we are in charge, or we are one of the leaders in charging infrastructure for electric vehicles, and we are defending that kind of mobility. We're also defending that the mobility was more sustainable. It's what is not happening. It's cheaper and more sustainable to move bits than to move atoms. And that's exactly what we prove with the lockdown. In the more severe times or days of the lockdown in Spain, for example, we were having that kind of reduction of greenhouse emissions in our cities when we were not moving us around the city, but we were keeping the while running through the technology. And we were proving that thanks to technology, in that case IT technology, we were doing exactly the same, well, not exactly, but a lot of the things that we were doing in the past in a different way. That was the proof of concept that we were talking in the past, that we can have a different way of working, a different way of relationship. It was not just possible, it was a reality. I think that was very, very clear for, let me say, all of us. It's very clear in our private lives. The question is, what happened in industries, for example, some very solid, traditional, heavy industries? Is that applicable, the same model? Well, here the good news is that what some others call the future, at least in ABB, I'm calling the present. Technology to make this happen in the industry, for example, it's also possible. It's not just that we are just buying through Amazon or that kind of platforms in digital way and there we are receiving the goods. No, even in the industry. And let me prove that. It's this, what I'm presenting to you, it's a very, very simple example, quite silly, very concrete, very small example of what was happening weeks ago. It's a real case, happens in Spain. I mean, we have installed a huge install base in the industry. One thing that is called drive is the power electronics, which drives the motors. By the way, motors are a very hidden energy consumption device that we have in the industry. Just for you to know, the energy consumed in motors, it's the 45% of the total energy consumed in the world. So, I mean, saving energy in motors is key to be sustainable, and there are technology to make that thing happen. So, all the devices, sometimes they stop. And that was a real case. I mean, one of the devices stopped it. We had to send a technician from Barcelona. It was a very specific thing. That thing normally takes 3 to 4 days. 1 day traveling, it's 1,000 kilometers from Barcelona to Andalusia, where it was happening, the stopping, then making the repair, and then come back. So 2,000 kilometers movement. With the technology that we have at the moment, we can connect with the device. We have also not just a connection, but also a remote guiding system where we can see what the technician on site from the customer can see, and then this is fixing the problem. I mean, what does it mean from sustainability point of view? I mean, the proof of that simple case is that just in our install base, very simple, we are a poor competitor there, our install base means that around 75% of the diagnosis that we are doing with that devices and 25% of the repairs that we are doing can be done remotely, which just in that our simple install base for that simple device reduce some like 14 tons CO2 emissions by just doing that simple thing. This is a reality. Can you imagine if we are applying that exact same technology for PLCs, for motors, for flow meters, for all the technology we have spread around the industries? That's a huge change in emissions that we are reducing just by using that technology. This is not the future. This is happening right now. I mean, we're talking about mobility, which is one of the drivers or one of the challenges that we have in sustainable future. That's absolutely true. The second thing is about the uses of the resources. And here I'm presenting you two clear trends that are going to happen in the following years. I mean, experts are saying that by 2050, will be 2 billion more people, more population in the globe. And the other trend that is more important even than this is that the people will be living basically in the cities, in the big cities. Around 70% of the population in the world will live in cities. What does it mean? Well, I mean, that means that if we have to feed 2 billion more people and create the cereals and have the farming for the food for all that people, probably we will need to use some more like half of the Amazonia space to really farm and cultivate and have produce our food, which I fully understand that you will say that this is not sustainable at all. Okay, so what could be the solution for that? Well, the solution could be probably start to see the things in a different way. I mean, we are producing now food fundamentally in 2Ds, our fields. But what happens if instead of producing the food in 2Ds, we start to produce in 3Ds? The thing changed completely. And this allows us to, for example, have vertical farms, which allows us to produce in much less space the same amount of food that we were having in 2D. And not just do that, reduce water consumption. When you are producing that in a controlled environment, you can reduce even after 95% of water consumption, which is fundamental to be sustainable. Or, for example, reduce the energy consumption and the greenhouse emission by having a renewable energy use it at that point. or facilitate the continuous production, improve the quality of the production. This is not just a dream. This is a real example where we're participating, and we were doing exactly that thing. This is a real photo. We were using our technology, and we were digitalizing the processes to really make that thing happen. We were reducing the energy consumption, the watering, and the irrigation for that things. We were introducing robots that are working together with the people, cobots in that case, that are able to really make the thing safer, more control, more productive, and closer where you are having the consume, which is another important dimension. Again, not a dream. This is a reality what's happening right now. We talk about energy consumption. I told you before that 45% of electrical energy consumption in the world is happening in electrical motors. That's a very, very unknown data. We have more than 300 million motors installed around the world. And you can see that motors everywhere, not just in the industries. I mean, in the mall, when you're ventilating the mall, for example, you have a motor which is happening in that thing. So this is a typical example of how we are using energy nowadays, or the most traditional way of using energy in airflow, for example, control. It's a very simple exercise, but you have a motor which is transmitting that energy to a fan by a transmission system, and then you have a flow that you control with a damper, okay? That's very inefficient. It's 68% efficient. So if you want to have 100 units at the output, you have to put 168 units in the input. I mean, with technology we have available, with, for example, electronics connected to the cloud, which allows us to understand what's happening there and having exact energy for that consumption. Electrical motors, which are much more efficient, and you have technology for that, and just a proper ventilation, you can increase the efficiency in that case for 83%, which is a huge reduction of energy consumption. Which is introducing me another concept that I would like to discuss with you. And it's that technology, it's key to make sustainable world, because it's not just about environmental. I mean, we used to talk very often about that sustainability. It's about 3 P&Ls. One, it's environmental. I mean, having or using less resources and using it properly. But the second one is also making it economical. That solution that I was presenting you before has payback because there's energy saving of less than 9 months. Me as a CEO, when I'm receiving, when someone is putting in front of me on my desk an investment of less than 2 years, I'm just signing it. This is 9 months. So before you finish your financial exercise, you're starting to save money. So you are sustainable, but you're also economically sustainable. So technology is key to understand that it's an enabler to have a sustainable world, but it's the only way also to make it economically sustainable. That's a very important topic that I want to raise to you. I mean, technology is there, and most of the times, a lot of times, it's economically sustainable. The third pilot is about our society. And I would like to spend sometimes on the rest of the percentage that we were talking about the first before in that trend. So I mean, we said that around 70% of the people will live in big cities. What happened with the rest of the other 30%? I don't know in the other countries, but in Spain there's a huge debate about the empty country or the empty Spain. So what happened with the people who is not living in the big cities? I mean, another thing that the pandemic has demonstrated to us, it has proved that we cannot have that long change. We cannot be depending on things that are, I don't know, produced in the end of the world, with respect to you, and then they have to send it to you. They have a lot of risk on that, and it's not sustainable at all. And the thing is that our society, our production model nowadays is based on big and large conglomerates. I mean, it's some big sites when we are looking for economies of scale. But again, technology is allowing us to have new production models. I'm presenting you just a very extreme example, which is putting production lines in containers and putting it together where the things are going to be consumed. And with what's the technology, the one that is needed, plus technology that allows us to control remotely, and with cobots that allows us to work together with the people next to that. That is the way to really break that equation that we were talking before. I mean, first of all, with that, putting closer the production facilities next to the one who is consuming, we are, first of all, reducing the risk of shortage, which is not sustainable in the long term, and pandemic was proving that. Secondly, I mean, you are reducing the distance of the consume. I mean, it's not make any sense to consume something that is produced in the other side of the world, and just they are bringing it to you. Even there are supply chains that when you are moving the goods around the world, just because it's cheaper somewhere to produce it. Technology allows us to be more productive and put it next to where the things are consumed. And secondly, thirdly, we are using better and more efficiency the raw materials. And last but not least, this is about people. We have to retain the talent in that areas. It cannot be that everyone is moving just because the trend in some of the big cities when you want to live in somewhere else. I mean, we have to have the talent also for that areas. And just finishing, I mean, in my conversation with my customers, when you sit down with a CEO and you start to talk about that thing, the first thing is the question that comes up for the people is, Marc, that's beautiful, it's really nice, but do we have to do it at the same time, everything? I mean, people is overwhelmed. Technology is there, but how I'm going to do it? Let me quote here another historian and an activist, a writer very famous in America, who was saying exactly that thing. If people could realize that the big changes are happening just in small pieces, and that things that are, I mean, and useful are small, all together make big changes. Probably people don't hesitate to make the things. And that's exactly what I would like to lead you with that message. I mean, first of all, technology, it's here. Secondly, technology, it's not just here because it's funny and to have it. It's because it's the enabler to make the thing happen and also to make it economically possible. So then the risk is, or the task is for us, is looking at the things differently, change the way that we look at the things, to change the things, and change it right now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marc. Thank you for challenging our thought process here on this important topic. And I think you've set us up well for the panel that is to come. So let's build on that. Let's build on that presentation with our distinguished panel. So I invite the panel up. Welcome, welcome to you all. It is a pleasure to have you here in person in Barcelona. And I know that we're capturing today's session by video, so I know plenty more people will hear the insights that have been talked about today. But let me start by introducing each of our panelists. We have Andres Escribano, New Business and Industry 4.0 Director for Telefonica Tech. Fabio de Pasquale, Digital Business Developer for Atos. Alan Smith, Head of UX, VP Digital and Service Design, Electrolux, and Michel Fraisse, Europe Vice President and CTO of Digital Power Solution for Huawei. So let's just dive right in. I think we have a lot that we could be talking about, and not as much time to talk about as we'd like. So I encourage the panelists to be as concise and crisp as they can in their answers. But let's start with a general question. So we all know that scientists are telling us that to stand a chance of limiting global heating to 1.5 degrees Celsius, we need to halve emissions over the next decade. How can we align our digitalization strategy with sustainability and scale climate action? So let me start to my left.
Okay, this is a very good question. I think from our point of view, I think the more important thing is how is help the community to understand how it is possible to use the technology to ensure that really we are able to accelerate the digitalization. I think as Marc mentioned, digitalization and sustainability are a pack, and it's necessary to use the tool that the technology offers to us to accelerate this digitalization.
Fabio.
Yeah, more than agree with Andres and Marc. Digital transformation and sustainable transformation are, as Marc mentioned before, in separate pack. And I don't imagine a digital transformation without sustainability, and the other way around. I don't imagine sustainability without digitalization, without digital solution. And I think we need to accelerate this process. We need to implement in our digital transformation strategy the sustainable principles. Mainly, very quickly, green IT. That means reduce the energy consumption and be more efficient. Switch from carbon energies and to renewable energy. Circularity, circular economy, prolong the life cycle of the product. Design the product to be manufactured, to be used, to be refurbished, to be reused, recycled, and remanufactured without using new raw material. And last two things. Introduce new business models, stop to use business model of the previous century. That means in creating new ones, use the current one, pay as you consume, product as service, pay as you drive, share the product. And last but not least, innovation. Innovation is key, research, and we need to invest in innovation and research to stop the climate change.
Alan, over to you.
Hey, yeah, it's a good question. I'm going to approach it with two sort of practical things and then one bigger. I think it's about setting the right KPIs and the metrics. I think, this is boring, but it's super important that we understand what we're measuring and then what actions these are going to allow us as a company to take, especially in relation to our digitalization strategy. And make those super transparent so that they're ownable by everyone. That's really going to motivate change. So giving them the information, digitalization is also about giving them tools to take these actions. But then, thirdly, I think it's also understanding how we deploy this new technology within sort of value systems that are changing. So the industrial Darwinian capitalist model, that was so much of the 20th century, I think we see that this is evolving and it's changing. So how do we deploy this technology and capture new forms of value, especially when it relates to sustainability?
Thank you, Alan. Michel.
I think we need to deploy 5G quicker, right? Because most of the people are thinking that 5G is consuming more power, which is kind of true. But what people forget to say sometimes is that 5G is 90% more efficient than 4G. And with the explosive growth of data and use of e-services, or as we saw during the lockdown, I mean, we need to have more efficient technologies. And I think, by deploying, 5G, by deploying fiber, which is cutting, the energy consumption compared to the current, copper solution by 40%, technology will help to reduce the carbon emissions.
Thank you. Thank you for that first observation. Now I'd like to dive more specifically into some points, I think, for each of you from your own experiences within your own companies. Andres, so from Telefonica Tech, I mean, the work you're doing includes a range of services: cloud, IoT, big data, AI. Which of these technologies or combination do you think would be the most critical in terms of tackling climate issues?
Yeah, I think it's difficult to say that there exists only one technology. I think the combination of both, several of them, they are the real important for this kind of, let's say, topic. Let me explain. When we have the use of Internet of Things for measure what's happening in the real world, we obtain the data that is necessary to be processing and gathering through the connectivity. In this case, we're talking about the 5G because it's obviously one of the key technology that we have for connect and extract all this kind of information for many sites. And later on, we need to processing a huge amount of data and take decisions. And it's the real thing, the last part, because when you take decisions over the real world and you are able to do these kind of things in real time, with thinking in a massive way, with able to take decisions over any corner of the world, you are able to really modify the environment and take action about that. But the last one, and probably is the less known technology that probably is possible to be implemented for the sustainability, is blockchain. And let me explain why blockchain. Because when you make actions of the real world, the benefits, one of the things that we forget is we need to be transparent and show that really this kind of effect is applicable for all of us. And the blockchain is, I think, is a trusted technology that is a trusted, let's say, protocol that allowed all of us to take actions or to take information about the action that is happening in the real world.
Great. You know, Fabio, one of the things that I mentioned in my opening comments, and one of the things we've been focusing on at GSMA, is the broader enablement effect that digital can bring for other sectors besides our own. When you work with customers, how are you taking them on that journey to understand what you know, how your services, your technologies can help them reduce their emissions?
Nowadays we have not only Atos but many other companies. We have a lot of digital solution to decarbonize, to implement circular economy, and are very difficult to mention all the solutions. For example, what we have done in Atos, we try to group this solution in 4 categories. The main one is try to support our customer to, first of all, have the current picture, know their carbon footprint. Secondly, set specific objective of carbon reduction with a specific time frame, and then cover this gap with a specific strategy and specific actions. Everything supported with digital platforms, able to monitoring all the action, control, set these objectives. The second part are what I already mentioned before, the green IT part. Green IT, already mentioned, all digital solution that have a very low impact on energy consumption. For example, from this point, we also started to include in our contract with our customers what we call DLA, Decarbonization Level Agreement. We committed in our contract to reduce the energy consumption and also the carbon footprint of our customer in digital services, digital workplace, cloud, data centers, and so on. If not, if we don't respect this commitment, we compensate with offsetting this emission. And this is a win or win for our customer. And then last 2 groups, IT for green, that means, as Marc shown before, all digital solution that actively for each market reduce the carbon footprint of our customer and introduce circularity in their business. And then last one, that is also important, offsetting. Compensate all the emission that we release in the atmosphere with sustainable project, with a carbon sequestration, naturally or artificially. And this is really important. And also cross-line communication. It's important also communicate very well what you are doing, how you are doing, or what is your plan, your strategy, and your results. This is key because everybody wants to be more sustainable. Suppliers, customer, shareholders is an important topic.
Thank you. Alan, you mentioned in your opening comments very much the notion that we have to be looking at this, technology implications in climate through the lens of the sort of greater awareness, the values that people are bringing to this today. And recent experience in looking at AI solutions, for example, in COVID response, there was very much that question of how do you embed ethics, values into your solutions. From a climate perspective, how do you actually do that? What guidelines? What do you follow when you're looking at this issue?
Thank you for that. So, from my perspective, working for a consumer products company, Electrolux, I spend, a significant amount of my time thinking or working with our teams around how do you actually design a product not just in an environmentally positive way, so looking at your supply chain, looking at your factories, all the operational stuff, But how do we actually design an experience, an end user experience that makes it easy for all of our customers to make the sustainable choice? How do you make that the easiest thing possible? And how can you, if that is your goal, that you're optimizing around, what are some of the interaction design guidelines? So, for example, we have a dishwasher where on a normal dishwasher, it's usually like fast or slow, or hot and cold are your choices. Ours is ecological or fast. And this is another sort of pattern, which is around, visualizing the actions or the effects that you're going to have. So I think designers are more and more getting into this space around taking the same gamification patterns that, sell Viagra on Facebook or sell a political party or all these other things. We're now entering this area where we're deploying those same sorts of mechanics in order to help people make and live a more sustainable life. And I like that you mentioned that trigram where it's environmental, but it's also social and it's economical.
I don't think
Good segue. I thought she was going to say I was taking too much time.
Fantastic. Talking about looking at designing of products, Michel, obviously Huawei is front and center in developing new and innovative 5G technologies. Now, there has been some discussion that 5G could lead to rises in energy consumption as more data is transferred across the networks. But I know you've also been prioritizing energy efficiency in those equipment. So how do you see this balancing out?
I'm gonna get your questions. Could you?
Yeah, basically, there is a sense in some communities that 5G, because of more data being transferred, could lead to an increase or a rise in energy consumption. But how is Huawei addressing that in the development of its equipment?
Clear, sorry. Yeah, I think there is at least 3 ways to go. First of all, we are working on reducing the power consumption of our own product, and this is quite important. The second way is, to promote renewable energy, and Huawei is today the biggest manufacturers of solar inverters for solar farms or residentials. So we can use the solar power basically to have green energy to power the different sites, mobile sites, central office site for telecom or data centers. So this is the two key points. The third one is we can help our customers to reduce their own energy consumption and to become greener. How do we do that? We do that by simplifying the sites. So for the sales site, for example, to go from a shelter and indoor solutions, which is consuming a lot of cooling and a lot of electricity for coolings, we go to smaller outdoor solutions, or to mount it directly on a pole, on the radio pole. This is one thing, so we don't have reducing the electricity consumptions used by the cooling. The second example that I mentioned before is to go from copper to fiber, and by doing that you will reduce by 40% the energy consumption and still increasing the data traffic and the bandwidth. We are promoting as well prefabricated data center solutions. So instead of having a lot of companies and people coming on site and spending a lot of time and resources on site, we do that in a factory. Everything is pre-mounted, pre-tested, and is delivered on site. A little bit like Marc maybe show on this factory in a container. It has a data center built from container, because it could be a small one, medium one, or it can be a complete building. Promoting renewable, I mentioned that before, and I would say last but not the least is we are adding artificial intelligence and intelligent algorithms in our product, but also on our network management systems. So basically you can have full visibility of what's going on into your sites, into your networks. You don't need to go on site and spend the energy of the car or the plane or whatever to go to see what's going on and maybe to go back because you don't have the right components. So everything getting automated. And by doing that, you will increase the efficiency of operation and maintenance. So as Marc said before, not only are you going to become greener, but you're going to also save some money. So you got OPEX savings. So this is in a nutshell what I will say.
No, thank you, Michel. And actually, maybe coming back to you, Alan, because that's looking at the network side. But you are a consumer products company, and of course, there's that pressure to make things smarter in everything we do, which puts more and more demands in the individual products. What kind of responsibility, or how do you tackle that issue of energy efficiency as there's more and more expectations on the consumer product?
Well, energy efficiency is certainly one dimension. It's also water usage, and then of course your manufacturing, at least for us. And I think companies certainly have a responsibility, and I think it's up to all of us to choose where we work. And of course, with all the other considerations, I think aligning yourself with a company that externalizes these same sorts of values that you think are important is one thing that more and more people are doing. And that means companies are going to have it in their own self-interest because they want to recruit these people. And hopefully, companies are also becoming a little bit more enlightened and like I say, moving away from this sort of capitalist Darwinian mode of operating where it's all zero sum to whatever this new era is where it's more collaborative and the value systems are much broader than just economic. But it's not just companies, right? Companies do have a responsibility, but governments also have a responsibility, and that's another place where we have to make our voices heard. And then, of course, where we can have the most direct action is on the choices we make, whether it's choosing to buy something or not, and then whom you're going to buy it from, which brands sort of align with you and are trying to do the least harm possible.
Thank you. Actually, Andreas, maybe coming back to you, because obviously, well, not obviously for everyone here perhaps, but Telefonica, in my experience, has been really a leading company within the mobile sector in really setting itself concrete targets and trying to make its way towards net zero in the near term. As more and more consumers put expectations on companies, how do you see that? How do you see that win-win combination of by doing good, you're doing well as a company, and that you're helping others reach net zero and delivering benefits to your users?
I think we help other customers or colleagues to evolve in this digital transformation, apply our lesson learned and technologies. And let me explain a little bit the example that we have with this kind of collaboration, because every vertical has different approach. For example, for industrial environment, we are able obviously to introduce the concept of Industry 4.0, but it's the next evolution, Industry 5.0, where appears really the benefit to use this concept that is around the use and implementation of different technologies. For example, 5G, artificial intelligence, or edge computing, all combined are able to offer something that we call in the wireless factory. Is really a new concept of factory that all things is moving, all elements are flexible, adaptable for all kind of demand that's happen, and control the overproduction if it exists. It's something that is the first step. Is very efficient and it's a new way to do the things. This is for an industrial environment. For obviously for agro, for food, we are implemented the technology in two ways. One is calling the smart agro precision, where you are integrated sensors, communication, and obtain data for many other areas like drones or satellites, and integrated for take decisions against decision for helping the agriculture life and predicted any kind of things that happen, including any kind of pandemic or something like that affected the different cultures. Specifically for agro, we have other examples. Marc explained a little bit what means the vertical farming, and you take the advantage to see in our booth a physical implementation of this kind of we call it industrial agro, because really is where we implemented this kind of combination of technology to offer something that is very, very impressive. That is the combination of technology with different cultures, in this case, with culture that is isolated in an environment, in a shelter that you are able to put in any place of the world. You are able to control the environment, etc., 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 and take decisions about production, benefits about the different topics, different types of, let's say, of different cultures, etc., etc. We have other kind of, let's say, approach in the concept of the smart cities. Obviously, smart lighting, all things related with irrigation, all integrated are other technology that we consider critical for this kind of sustainability. And the last one is related with the energy. Obviously, all things related with how it's possible to manage the energy, control the consumption, etc., at all levels, not only at the industrial level. Obviously, for consumer side is very important. All this kind of stuff is creating a set of combination of technologies and result for the business case.
Thank you, Andre. And Fabio, so we've heard a bit now the Telefonica tech approach. I wanted to get your perspectives broadly on what role you think technology companies should play, and in particular systems integrators, in the eco-sustainable digital transformation.
I think we have an important role. Nowadays, 90% of solutions that are able to decarbonize our countries, our businesses, our companies, have been created by technology companies. For sure, also Atos as a system integrator, we have an important role like orchestrator to put together all the solutions, trying to even, if possible, improve them. And in particular, we need to, as mentioned before, put on and accelerate on innovation. And the innovation with the two characteristics. One, already mentioned before, the green IT, that's reduce the energy consumption, and the other one of all kind of solution that we will be able to create should be IT for green. For specific markets, to be used in the daily life of users, companies, and any kind of actor that will release emissions in the atmosphere, directly or indirectly. And the most important thing is that innovation. Why innovation is important? Because, for example, last year with the pandemic, we have considered the pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, as an emergency. But we are not considering in the same way the climate change as an emergency. Last year, with innovation, with research, we created, in less than 12 months, a vaccine. And right now, we are not able to create a solution or any kind of modern solution, one modern vaccine for the climate change, because we are not really considering the climate change like an emergency. Time, as you mentioned before, time is over. We need to push, we need to invest in innovation to decarbonize our planet.
Thank you for that thought. And actually, I have a question that I want all thoughts from each of you on, no particular order. But you talked about obviously the response to the pandemic and that sense of emergency. obviously governments are heavily involved in that response. Governments are also, of course, heavily involved in the debate around climate. We have COP26 coming up this year. I wanted to get your perspectives. I mean, we had a ministerial program here in Barcelona. We have 133 delegations participating. Energy efficiency, definitely important to many of them, particularly when they're looking at 5G, but how much do you think the responsibility falls, or what role do you think government plays, and how much do you think business needs to lead in climate action? So I want a response from each of you, but I'll let whoever wants to go first, go first.
Yeah, you like.
I can go first.
Perfect.
I think since 2015, with the Paris Agreement, many countries are started to legislate in terms of sustainability to stop the climate change, and this has been perceived by companies like only an obligation, but it's not only an obligation. I think it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity because this transformation don't come only from above. Come only from the bottom, from the markets, from the consumers, for the users that want to be more sustainable. If we do the right investments in digitalization to support the sustainable transformation, we'll be able to, for sure, have a return of the investment, generate revenue, and of course decarbonize our planet and have a good future.
Alan, I think you were getting ready there a minute ago too.
Yeah, I think business are certainly very important stakeholders, as are the government, and collectively, each of us belongs to a company and a government, to some degree, or at least we participate. So I think for government, it's about setting the goals and setting the right standards and how we measure against that, and putting in places ways to keep companies accountable. And for companies, the name of the game is to deliver the best user experience, the best product, the best service within those constraints. And I think when we're optimizing around more than just ARPU or EBITDA or whatever financial metrics, when we're also optimizing around, let's say, sustainability, then we're creating a space for innovation to happen. Because that sort of innovation happens, really, it needs constraints. So that's how I tend to think about the balance between private and public.
Great. Michel, I see you
I took it off too.
I view that as a sign.
I think it has to come from both sides. If we look at the solar industry at the beginning, was a lot of incentives from government to push the installation of solar panels. Today, in fact, you will see that operators are signing, PPAs agreements, long-term agreements with some renewable companies, so paying green, electricity, and they do that for two reasons. One is good for the planet. Two is good for their wallet. It's cheaper. Okay, this is the key thing. So it's both government and private. If you look at the EV industry, the electrical car, same thing. At the beginning, they will need a push from government so that the mass is getting bigger. Now you can see with the lithium-ion batteries, for example, which are going to replace in the long terms and already happening now the lead acid. You'll see that you got gigafactories being announced in Europe. This is government push and business. This is both of them. So regarding what's happening in the telecom industry, and in Europe in particular, Europe, you got the European Green Deal, you got the Paris Agreement. So this is push from the government bodies. But then you got the GSMA and all the telecom operators who decided to be even better, or to be at least as good as these targets. So it's always a blend. And within Huawei, what we're doing is basically giving the technology. We believe that technology will enable, a more sustainable world. And we created basically a website you can go, it's called Tech for a Better Planet. And you will see that the technology will help the world to be greener, to be more healthy, and it will also help basically our kids to live better. Because we don't need to forget what's coming after us, basically.
Thank you, Michel.
And very quick. I think we have in our hands really the responsibility, like a society, to see what is the next step. We need to push both private and governments to implement the rules, the laws that is help to use this kind of sustainability. I think if we chose something that is created like a consumer, that is supported this kind of sustainability effect, I think it's more easy for us to justify or accelerate this kind of, let's say, of movements. If we depend on the others movements, for example, like governments or private companies, we lost this traction. I think one of the lessons learned of the pandemic is we are in the right momentum to really accelerate this kind of digital transformation for many areas, and sustainability, I think, is one of the key questions that we need to put in this digital transformation.
Right, and staying with you, Remote and Andres, talking about the way that business can do, I think maybe just getting a little concrete now, what is a concrete example, a case study of a project that Telefonica Tech has been involved in, where you've seen demonstrable impact on carbon emissions?
We have several examples with the FAO that we are implemented in Latin America to take decision about with a lot of music.
Somebody's celebrating.
No problem.
Celebrating carbon emissions.
we are able to do the things. I think we have several examples with FAO for use this kind of agro-precision, but here we have another example that we are implemented with the industrial agro, and you can see in the booth, because we are implemented in a customer in Spain for on a fruit for this kind of culture. And I think is the next step. It's something that is able to, let's say, change the rules regarding with the food, democratize the use, the consumption of food, for example, in areas that is quite complex to access to this kind of other kind of fruits or other kind of vegetable to be more healthy. And I think it's a real example that we are implemented with the real technologies today.
Great. And moving back to you, Fabio, maybe some specific solutions that Atos offers that makes concrete difference in CO2 emissions?
We have many solutions, but its solutions are also only a part of the way to solve the climate change. For example, in Atos, what we first of all we want to do, and nowadays we reduce our emission of 50%. And we are committed to become carbon neutral in 2028. That means we are a sustainable supplier for our customers, and we have a low impact on the scope 3 emission, indirect emission of our customer. This is important. That's something that any company should do. Then, for example, another thing that we have done has been last year acquired one of the most important company for sustainable projects around the globe. That is called EcoAct, and now we integrated EcoAct in our organization, creating a specific practice called Net Zero that supports all customers in decarbonization with different solutions in each industry. And we created 9 centers of excellence for decarbonization. And one of them is here in Barcelona, the Mobile World Capital. And this is important. We have also North America, in Europe, in Asia. But I think the most important is here. And with specific portfolio of all these solutions that I mentioned before to decarbonize actively and support our customer to decarbonize their business. And I think the most important thing is change the mentality of your company. We need to be able to support our company, and when we want to do any kind of business, we need to include the decarbonization, circular economy in the center of the business.
Fantastic, and apologies for the music that's decided to join our discussion, but it's all, getting the evening. We're starting to celebrate, I suppose. Moving to you, Alan, I would like to just sort of get your thoughts on what do you see as the biggest challenge or obstacle to achieving your goals on climate when it comes to your products?
Yeah, I think that's a good one. The challenge is multifold. I would say if I strip away all the issues, it really comes down to getting the right mix of incentives. So we're a big company, a lot of people in the decision-making process, right? And I think Electrolux has done a great job of, setting the right metrics. I mean, these are board-level KPIs, and we report on them quarterly around sustainability. And we've done a really good job of being on track to be climate neutral in all of our operations by 2030. I think one thing that's maybe taking a little bit longer to figure out is how do we balance the short-term incentives of the business that's still really grounded in this business model of the last 100 years, where we take raw materials out of the ground, we bend metal, we make a product, and then we sell it, and then that's the end of it, right? Until that person needs to buy another one. How do we align the incentive structure that's around that to a new incentive structure around, maybe we make the products last a lifetime. Maybe you're only going to buy one refrigerator for the rest of your life, or however that works out, right? Or whether it's product as a service, where you're just buying the job to be done, the output of that product instead of the physical product itself. So I think along with sustainability and certainly digitalization, what that's doing is it's enabling new business models. And our existing organizational structure, and I think a lot of companies are like this, they don't know how to actually incorporate these new business models. So I think that's a big challenge for us.
Great. Michel, for you, obviously you're involved at the company that has a huge level of product development and marketing going on constantly. What do you see as the biggest challenge of always keeping sustainability and climate in focus during that product development cycle? I think we're close on time, so I'm going to maybe give you the final word and your perspective from Huawei.
I think today we do a life cycle analysis assessments for every our product. We are improving the energy efficiency. This is something easy to measure, and our customers are taking benefits of it. But one of the challenges I think today is that there is no standardized methodology on how to measure this life cycle assessment, how to do these life cycle assessments. So on the same product from different manufacturers, you can have different rules, and the result, what that means at the end. So I think this is something that the industry needs to work on, is to try to find a methodology which will be accepted and which will be, where you stand. Because this is, one of the greatest challenge I think we'll have to face, including Huawei.
Great, thank you all so much. I think, I know we're running out of time, so just quickly, I think we've all agreed that really the time for action is now. I think every company here is showing the leadership you're taking in terms of doing work that is both responsible for the planet, but I think also very importantly, and I think it's been highlighted, the economic opportunity that comes with doing that. So it's very clear digital technologies have a role to play, I think, across the economy. And I love a point that was made earlier, the importance of KPIs and metrics so that we make sure that we're holding ourselves to account as we move forward. So thank you all so much for your insights, and thank you for joining us today.